The Toolbox Killers, Evil on Wheels. In 1979, two men drove a silver van through California, hunting teenage girls. What happened inside that van was so horrific, the FBI still uses it to train new agents in understanding true evil. These men were Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris. Together, they became known as the Toolbox Killers, and their story is one of the most disturbing in modern American crime. Lawrence Bittaker was highly intelligent, with an IQ above 130, but had a long criminal record for burglary and assault. He was manipulative, cold, and emotionless. Roy Norris, on the other hand, was deeply disturbed. He had a long history of sexual offenses, including attempted rape and assaults against women. The two met in San Luis Obispo prison in 1977. What began as a casual friendship quickly turned into something far more sinister. They bonded over violent fantasies and made a plan. Once released, they would act them out together. When both men were out of prison by 1979, they bought a silver GMC cargo van. It had no rear windows and sliding side doors. They called it Murder Mac. Inside, they installed a bed, tools, ropes, and a homemade cooler to store alcohol. They also carried a radio, cameras, and most chillingly, a toolbox. It contained ice picks, pliers, a hammer, and other instruments of torture. Their victims were chosen at random. Between June and October 1979, they abducted at least 5 teenage girls from the streets of Southern California. The girls ranged in age from 13 to 18. They often posed as photographers, offering the girls a modeling opportunity, or simply offered rides home. Once inside the van, the doors were locked, and the nightmare began. Inside the van, the girls were tortured, mentally, physically, and emotionally. They were bound, gagged, and subjected to unimaginable cruelty. The killers took turns inflicting pain, sometimes over several hours. What makes this case even more chilling is that they recorded the sounds of their crimes. Audio tapes were made of their victims' screams and the killers laughing. One of the girls, 16-year-old Shirley Ledford, was murdered on Halloween night in 1979. Her audio tape was later used in court and reduced hardened FBI agents to tears. How were they caught? Norris, shaken by guilt or perhaps afraid of being arrested, told a friend about the murders. That friend went to the police. Under interrogation, Norris confessed everything and agreed to testify against Bittaker in exchange for life in prison instead of the death penalty. Police found photographs, the toolbox, and evidence inside the van, including victim belongings. At trial, the evidence was overwhelming. The jury heard the horrifying tapes. One juror vomited. Reporters left the courtroom in tears. The judge called it the worst case he'd ever seen. Bittaker showed no emotion. He was convicted and sentenced to death. He died in prison in 2019. Norris lived until 2020, dying behind bars. The legacy of the Toolbox Killers remains terrifying. Their recordings are still used to teach criminal psychology. The case is studied for its extreme cruelty and manipulation. The victims were innocent, ordinary girls on their way home, lured into a van by two monsters who had planned everything. Some monsters don't lurk in shadows. They drive beside us on the highway. They smile, they talk, they blend in until it's too late. This is the story of the Toolbox Killers. If you're interested in more real-life horror stories, subscribe for more true crime documentaries.